Premier Alan Winde is pushing for full financial lifestyle audits of senior Western Cape police officers after a report raised credible concerns about links to organized crime with gangs. With public confidence in law enforcement on the line, the Premier warns that the status quo cannot remain the same. And he joins us now for another conversation on this. Premier, thank you so much for the time. Appreciate it. It's ultimately very disturbing. We've been asking ourselves consistently, how do we resolve this matter of gang violence in and around the Western Cape? And if there are massive links to police structures, then it's never going away. How concerned are you? One, two, how do we get rid of it?
So I think that obviously this has been something that's been coming on for a very long time. From that bail application, Judge Tulare saying that he thinks that there's links between the 28 gang and the top table of the SAPS. We said, what could we do? But the one initiative would be to build trust. And of course, at the moment, we're seeing trust is broken between communities and the police, especially around gangsterism and shooting. And we're just seeing a massive spate of more and more shootings happening across the Cape Flats. Surely the first thing to do is to put lifestyle audits in place to go and verify, get an independent verification. Is there any linkage to anybody through whatever it is, through funding, through money coming in and out of your account, or in your immediate family, to your lifestyle itself, to where you go, to how you spend money, etc. That is the first basic thing to get right. I've been calling for this for a long time. I think I'm now on the 13th letter to the 3rd different police minister. In actual fact, yesterday, again, I reiterated it when General Patakile, our provincial police commissioner, came to report to cabinet on the gang violence. I again said to him, surely the easiest thing to do is to allow these lifestyle audits to happen. And there's always this dispute between the national commissioner, the provincial commissioner, and the national minister. But let's just get it done. And we've even said in the Western Cape, we will pay for those lifestyle audits for those top management positions in SAPS in the Western Cape. It's about another layer of building trust. And right now, it is, I think, an urgent layer that needs to be built.
What did the provincial police commissioner actually say with regards to these lifestyle audits? As she's just said that, has he said that it's the reason it's not happening is because of the disputes within the police itself, or is it just other regulatory or perhaps something else holding it back?
So, at the end of the day, he was saying, it's the national commissioner and the national police and policy, and that's how it's got to be implemented. I'm saying we're pushing all 3 spheres, all 3 levels to say, just let's get it done. I think it is the first step. So, there seems to be a hesitation. And right now, while the spotlight is on policing in South Africa, whether it be the ad hoc committee, whether it be the Mklanga Commission, surely this is the perfect time to say, yes, let's actually put it in place. We've been doing it in our cabinet now. This is the 2nd term. We always do a lifestyle audit on any member that comes into the cabinet at the beginning of the 5-year term. And then when they leave at the end of the 5-year term, they get their 2nd lifestyle audit. Is your lifestyle commensurate with your salary and your income as declared? And it's just a basic management tool to build that trust. And, we will pay for it. We will enable it. And so we're keeping the pressure on to say, come on, let's get this done.
How much do these actually cost in general, do you think?
They cost a couple of R100,000 per individual. So they're not cheap. But in actual fact, I think that from a trust point of view, if we've got to put aside 1 or 2 million out of our budget just to do, or even if it's 5 million to do the top management of SAPS, I think that would be money well spent because it's a first layer of building trust.
Yeah. How do you then conduct them, especially because you want to ensure credibility here being a key part of this conversation? How will these audits be conducted?
So the way we do ours is we put it out to a tender. And in actual fact, the tender that has been won now has been won by a Gauteng company and not by a Western Cape company. Now, I've actually preferred that because then it's even removed further away from us here in the province. You need to have an independent body. And I think that can happen in 2 ways. SARS can also do it. So it could be a SARS enabled lifestyle audit, or it could be an independent audit company that then gets the permissions to look at your bank accounts, to look at your social media, to look at, your properties, to look at all aspects of your life, to measure your lifestyle. Of course, it's not a public document. When they're finished, even our own ones get put in the safe. What they do is they give a report. If there's anything that needs further investigation, then that gets escalated to myself as the Premier, or here it will be escalated to the Minister to say these individuals need deeper investigation. And then that would then say, well, now there needs to be perhaps it actually needs to be a charge laid or clarity given on whatever that is. But it needs to be independent. It cannot be done within the organization.
Yeah, some might argue, though, Premier, that these lifestyle audits themselves would be insufficient, right, without broader structural reforms to the SAPS.
Absolutely. I mean, it's only one component or one mechanism of building trust. There are a whole range of things you've got to put in place to build trust. And to actually be efficient and operational. But surely this is the first step that you need to take, especially when there are accusations that says, there's linkages between SAPS and gangs. I mean, that needs to be refuted, dealt with. And of course, if there are, it needs to actually have consequences.
We're also awaiting the Ombudsman's report, I believe, as well. I think that's also eagerly anticipated. How do we ensure that those findings are acted upon decisively and it's not just another piece of paper that we gather dust on, speak about, and do nothing with?
Okay, so it's not the Ombudsman report. The Ombudsman report was a report I asked for 3 years ago, and that said, what could I do?
Yeah.
I've made that public. It did raise an issue of safety of the investigating officers, which is where I didn't make it public immediately. We've redacted those names because we don't want them threatened. Already in this case that investigation came out of, 3 witnesses had already been murdered at that stage. So obviously you're dealing with gangsters here. But the real report into that investigation is done by IPID. This is the police, independent police investigations unit, and they are busy with that investigation, although I think it's taken quite long. And we are waiting for a further feedback and report on the IPID report on whether there's any kind of substance to these allegations. So, that is one thing is an investigation. A lifestyle audit is another step. So, we've got to keep these things going because we've got to make sure these accusations are unsubstantiated, or if they are, there's got to be major consequences. You can't have gangs and police infiltrated. Just
wondering then, would those not overlap?
Yeah, they can. I mean, but they can happen also independently. Of course, IPID doesn't report to the province. We've asked them for an update. IPID would also report those findings to the National Minister, the Police Commissioner, and IPID would also then be able to report to the National Standing Committee on Oversight.
All right. Protections against whistleblowers or those who are investigators as well in a case like this would be also very important once these lifestyle audits were to happen or anything like that. How would you ensure their protection?
Well, our provinces don't really have a role to play there, but I would definitely, if I was requested to, we would see how we could help. But that is imperative. I mean, there's no ways if a whistleblower comes forward and then is not guaranteed some kind of protection, that is a failure of the system. And we know that there's questions about that. That's why a commission of inquiry into whether gangs are infiltrated in the SAPS, in doing it in a public open forum, nobody's going to come forward and actually make a statement and say, well, this gangster's linked to that police officer, because we've already seen in the Tulare case, in that bail application of that specific case, that witnesses are being murdered. So, there are high risks in this space, but we need to guarantee whistleblower protection. And of course, that is also one of the areas that are difficult because it's also within the ambit of the police.
Yeah, look, you've spoken about public confidence, which is ultimately very fragile, if not almost eroded, when it comes to the police infrastructure in the country. How do we balance the exposing of corruption, which is an absolutely necessary element, with maintaining morale, particularly among the many honest officers who are still risking their lives as well in the force. How do we keep the morale up there?
I think that is a very, it's a good question and a difficult question to answer, because quite frankly, to be an upstanding, positive police officer today with what's happening must be very difficult. I think the other side of it, especially in high crime areas where gangsterism specifically and extortion is happening and people are being shot and murdered, it must be so difficult to be a police officer, a LEAP officer, a Metro police officer. When you wake up in the morning, your family kind of, has to say, goodbye to you to go off to work. It's very different to anybody else going off to work. It's a high risk environment, and they put their lives on the line every single day. And we have some outstanding police officers in our systems. And of course, I really do feel for them. And this is where leadership must come in. And this is obviously, at the moment, everything's being exposed through these processes. But police leadership, from the minister to the commissioners, to those top tables, they've got a big job at the moment to actually hold the system together. And I mean, this is their challenge right now, is to build that confidence and trust. And they've got to put mechanisms, management tools and mechanisms in place to enable that to happen. And the best way to do it is to actually have the resources to go out there and catch the criminals and reduce levels of crime. That is the challenge that we have. Unfortunately, where we are in the Western Cape, we do not get the resources. When I became Premier, we had 20,000 police officers. A few years later, now we've got 13,000 police officers. Yeah. We've got major vacancies in the investigation space. We have 1,000 vacancies in the province. We have 8,500 in South Africa. And so resources are critical and management is critical. And we've got to get those two things together with proper leadership to build that trust with our citizens, but also to have that management within the system, because we need to root out the bad apples as quickly as we can, and then we need to build confidence.
Is that why it's important for you to have the devolution of policing powers? Because it means that your role as a province is enhanced slightly, particularly in the fight against crime.
Absolutely. I mean, the first thing that I would say, and I get asked this question, if you got given the power tomorrow, what would you do? We are asking for how can we play our role in investigations, because the investigations are not being done properly. The investigators are overloaded. Some of them have 500 cases to investigate per investigator. That is an impossibility. You will fail at your job if you get that kind of burden. So we want to help in those spaces. If we can get just that going initially, help with the investigation so that you've got a quality docket that ends up in a court system that actually gets a conviction. There must be consequences to crime. If we're only getting 4 and 5% convictions on firearms that are being taken off the street at the moment, what is the consequence of carrying a firearm? It's not there. So that's where we would put power. And again, what I would also do is make sure that the resources are deployed to where the highest crime is. At the moment, where the highest crime is in our province, we have the least number of officers deployed. So in other words, the police officer to population ratio is way out. We've got places where it is closer to the norm of 250, 240 officers per, one officer per 240 people. But some places in our region right now, we've got 600, 700, and 800 people per officer. Yeah. I mean, that is unworkable. And, that's the first thing I would do in management, is I would move the resources to where the problem is so that we can actually start reducing crime.
Alan Winde, Western Cape Premier, thank you so much for the time helping us understand this.